You know the vibes. Welcome back to another episode of the Hoop Genius podcast brought to you by NBA 2K25. It's myself, Mo Mooncey, alongside me as always the three-time NBA champion BJ Armstrong and the GM extraordinaire, Mr. Scott Perry is back in the building. Gentlemen, how was your weekend?
Good weekend, Mo. It's always a good weekend when it's sunshine and 78 down here in South Florida. So it's
Oh man.
exactly.
Scott, let me ask you, have you got a guest room? Because over here,
I do
there
have
was
a
a
guest room.
storm.
Yeah.
There was a storm so bad, it blew down a tree in front of my house and it blocked my front door. So I couldn't even leave until someone came and chopped up the tree.
Really?
Yep, that's how
Wow.
powerful the storm was this weekend.
Wow.
Mo, I think you ought to write a book because every time I get on here with you, some kind of adventure.
Oh, Scott.
It's some kind of thing, you have a multitude of life adventures, man. That I think it would be a great read someday.
I'm gonna tell you this. That wasn't even the craziest adventure of the weekend.
So, and next, I don't even want to know who came and chopped down the tree to help that adventure get started. So,
Bringing new meaty to let's chop it up. Hey, he's bringing new meaty to let's chop it up. You know,
A whole different tree. BJ, how's the birthday party?
Oh, excellent. Little one is turning 9, so it's a birthday week. Scott knows this about my family. It's a birthday week, birthday month. So it's always a birthday, but it was good.
Turning 9.
Yeah, Julia's turning 9, so it's all good. It's good.
I do want to start this show. I got a message from one of our most dedicated listeners who unfortunately suffered a serious health condition this weekend, who's ended up in serious condition hospital. So I just want to send some prayers and some love in their direction because I know they might be listening to this. I just want you to know the whole family here at the podcast is thinking of you and wishing you a speedy recovery, my brother. So
Yes, absolutely.
we're sending some positive energy that way, and hopefully, we'll have a nice episode talking about some NBA that will distract you. So let's talk about what's been happening in the NBA, and we got to start with the big fella over in Denver, Nikola Jokic, who put up an insane 56 points, 16 rebounds, and 8 assists in a loss to the Washington Wizards. But then he followed it up with 48 points, 14 rebounds, and 8 assists in a win against the Atlanta Hawks. Now, BJ, you know me for some time, and you know my policy. I don't count stats if they come in a loss. My dream is to have a stats database that only includes games that you won. So it doesn't matter what you did when you lost. But everyone kind of talks about Jokic, he needs more help. And every time we talk about the Nuggets, I know what we're going to say is they lost Bruce Brown and Jeff Green, and then they lost KCP and so on and so forth. And we have this conversation every week about the Denver Nuggets, right? But my question is, in terms of the MVP award, everyone this season so far speaks about like Jokic has already won it. They're like, oh, he's carrying this whole team. He needs some help, and he's putting up these insane stat lines, so on and so forth. The Nuggets are the 7th seed right now. They're 12-10. Is this award broken that we're now just relying on, oh, he's putting up crazy numbers, but they're not winning games, but it's not his fault because he's putting up great numbers. The team's just bad. How do you guys feel about that?
Well, first of all, hats off to the Joker. You're talking about a guy whose model of consistency, he is it. But I'm going to go back to what we talked about last week, though. I still believe, and it's early to be having any definitive front runner 20 games in. I think a lot of guys can lay claim to very fast starts. He's one of them. Jason Tatum is another. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is another, who's held down the fort really well for this OKC Thunder without Chet Holmgren. I still believe when all the votes will be cast, when you're talking April, where you finish in those conference standings is going to matter. And we talked about it a little bit last year. Luka Doncic had a tremendous statistical year. But in the regular season, what did they finish? Sixth, sixth?
Yeah. Like throughout the season, they were like 9th, 8th seed, and then they made those trades and made that late run.
They made the late run, yes. But so I just believe that you got to at least be a top 4 team in your conference. That's going to be hosting a home playoff game to win it. So let's see how it unfolds. Look, the guy is going to be in the MVP conversation, even if the team is 7th or 8th at the end of the regular season, and that means Nikola Jokic, just because he's established himself that way, arguably best player in the league right now. So let's see. Let's see what happens. But I have faith, though, that the wins, to your point, Mo, and we need to create an analytics model that will basically reward winning for those guys that have tremendous stats.
You know, BJ, you talk about Jokic and you call him the most charming player in basketball. But I don't want to ask you about Jokic. I want to ask you about the point guard position for the Denver Nuggets, because right here it says Russell Westbrook, when he starts in place of Jamal Murray, is averaging 14 points, 8.5 assists, 5 rebounds, 53% from the field, and they're 4-1 when Russell Westbrook is the starting point guard. Jamal Murray, obviously, we spoke about this before. He signed that big deal over the summer, and his play has somewhat regressed. How much of a concern is this for you with regards to the Denver Nuggets? Because we know he always raises his game in the playoffs, but it's a risky strategy, especially in this Western Conference, to kind of wait for the playoffs to come around.
Well, with this Denver Nuggets team as is, you know, their margin of error is very limited. They have they need every player. They need Jamal Murray. They need Russell Westbrook. They need everyone to be available. You know, Jokic stats are just amazing. I mean, these are, I would imagine, what Wilt Chamberlain stats would look like every single night. The year he averaged, about 50 points. I mean, these are just...
He will average 50.
Yes. You know, I mean, imagine someone doing that. Yeah, imagine someone doing this every night, and we're saying, what did he do? Well, he had 56 and 18. You know what I mean? Every single night. So this is just an incredible. Now, as both of you guys know, and our listeners know, I'm not much into the stats. You know, I look at, you know, what you do. Scott, you know, had a excellent take on saying, hey, yeah, these stats are impressive. However, winning, you know, is probably the most important thing. But, you know, there is one stat, a team stat, that's just like incredible to me. And I just want to point this out, that the Nuggets are the NBA's best team with Jokic on the floor. And then they are the worst team when he's not on the floor. That, to me, is one of the most mind-boggling stats as you're tracking the team. Because you can say this about Jokic. Scott, he plays a winning brand of basketball.
No question he does. Oh,
yeah, now, you know, he's not one of those guys that just stuffs the stat sheet. He actually contributes to winning. So, in the end, what this says to me is that it is our job, or it is the job of the front office there in Denver, to begin to surround him with players that can play to his level. He's certainly up for the challenge. That's what I love about it. You know, he's not saying I need help. He's not saying anything. He's going out there trying to figure out and do what he has to do to win the game. So,
and BJ, I've told you this before. It's one of my favorite quotes. Stats are like bikinis. They show you a lot, but they don't show you everything. Because as well and good as it is,
what is a timeout?
Exactly.
Okay. You gotta explain that to me. You gotta explain to me.
I think it explains itself.
No. You gotta explain that to me. It shows you
a lot,
whatever. Okay,
but it doesn't show you everything.
Okay, well, explain that to me, because I have no idea what that means.
Because when you hear a stat like they're the best team when Jokic is on the floor and they're the worst team when Jokic isn't on the floor, it makes you think, wow, Jokic is really moving. And I'm a huge fan of Jokic, by the way. Let me preface this with saying that. But what it doesn't tell people is when you look at the rotations that Mike Malone runs for the Denver Nuggets, is most teams, they kind of stagger their better players with some of their bench players so that there isn't such a significant drop-off when their starters are on the bench. right? So like the Celtics, for example, will run minutes with Tatum in the bench unit, or Tatum and Drew Holiday with the bench unit, and then Jaylen Brown and Derek White with some guys from the bench, and so on and so forth. When you look at the Denver Nuggets and the rotations that they play, how many minutes do any of the starters play without Jokic being out there on the court?
Well, Mo, I'm waiting to
And
understand.
I can tell you the answer.
I want you to explain.
Because
explain.
in this win against the Hawks, if you look at the rotations, there was only a 4-minute stretch to start the second quarter where they had 2 stars on the court without Jokic being there. So Mike Malone runs rotations where it's basically the starters or the bench. There's no staggering of the lineups. There's no mixing the guys, or he might throw one bench guy in with the starters and so on and so forth. But there's no staggering with the lineup. Do you see what I'm saying here?
I'm stuck on the bikini thing. I'm trying to understand. Now you're talking about staggering of guys. I need to understand. You know, I'm stuck on the short. I don't know how.
Okay. Let me give you the full. Let me
see, Mo, you have taken us on the off ramp here now.
Exactly. I'll give you the full quote, right?
Yeah, give me the full
professor
quote.
And economist Aaron Levenstein once said, "Statistics are like bikinis. What they reveal is suggestive, but what they conceal is vital." Okay. So the stat is suggesting that Jokic playing the Denver Nuggets are the best team in the NBA when he's not playing, they're the worst team in the NBA. But what it's concealing is that Mike Malone's rotations do not accommodate for this drop off. He's not running rotations that you will take that data on board and be like, okay, well, if we're the best team in the NBA when Jokic is playing, but with the worst team when he's resting, maybe let me figure out a rotation where we can stay afloat in those minutes instead of just running all the bench guys together and running all the starters together.
Okay.
Do you see what I'm saying?
No, I don't understand. Scott, maybe you can understand.
I understand what I'm saying.
Scott,
if I'm saying to you,
I don't understand.
Our non-Jokic minutes are the worst in the NBA.
I'm statistic. I'm just
So
saying, team statistics,
break it down.
Team statistics, yes.
Yeah. So if you have the data that your non-Jokic minutes are the worst in the NBA, right? Then you
and what's the total number on that? I'd like to know what that is too. And you know, I think to break it down further to fully understand, okay, the minutes he's off the court, and then what are the lineups, to your point, Mo, when he's not on the court?
Well, this is what I'm saying.
Right? I like is Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter still in there with 3 other minutes?
Okay, so I'll break down the game from the Hawks last night, right? The first quarter, Jokic played 12 minutes. Okay. The second quarter, he rested for the first 5 minutes of the second. The lineup to start the second was Christian Brown, Michael Porter Jr., Julian Strawther, Jalen Pickett, and DeAndre Jordan. Right, you got a 4-minute stretch with those guys.
So you had one starter, Michael Porter, in there,
and Christian Brown. So you have 2 stars,
Brown,
right?
Okay.
But then for the rest, Jokic checks back in. The stars are all back in. Third quarter starts. It's all the stars, and then you have a 3-minute stretch where it's Jokic, Christian Brown, and 3 of the bench guys. And then the fourth quarter, well, they kind of won the game by that point, so it is what it is. But this is what I'm saying to you, is if you get killed so badly in those minutes when Jokic is taking a rest, maybe you would want to keep Russell Westbrook in the game playing with the bench. Maybe you would want to keep Aaron Gordon in to bring some energy and help provide rebounding and defense to that bench unit that's getting killed so badly in those minutes. That's the point that I'm making, is you have to figure out lineups that can accommodate for the weakness in your team, which is minutes where Jokic isn't on the bench. Because it's all well and good running Jokic and Aaron Gordon at the same time, and you have great statistics in those bits. But if your bench is that bad, maybe when Jokic is resting, play Aaron Gordon with the bench a little bit, and then have a bench guy come in and play with Jokic, and then so on and so forth.
Good point. But go to the other part. You know, as a front office person, I got to be looking at my roster too. Do I have enough to help them? And that's what, again, and I know we didn't want to go down the rabbit hole of no more KCP, no more Jeff Green, no more Bruce Brown, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But somebody's got to step into those roles, and they have yet to identify those players, in my opinion, who can do it at the level that those guys were doing it. Russell Westbrook, to your point, it was the new addition this offseason, has shown signs of it. but there hasn't. You probably need to even get more out of him right now than. And again, Russell's going to give you everything that he has, but he's just going to have to get more and more comfortable, because you're going to need a couple players to really step up, Mo, to your point, when you're talking about second unit guys. And you know, look, we talk about Boston here. When they go to their second unit, usually, Tatum or Brown is anchoring one of those second units. But look at the growth and how Peyton Pritchard has stepped up.
Yeah.
And so that's what they're not getting there in Denver.
Yeah. Like
it's a roster thing.
Yes, the theory that Mike Malone has is we'll be good enough in the Jokic minutes that we can win the game, and that'll be enough to offset the 10 to 15 minutes where he's resting, right? Mm-hmm. But some of the lineups that he plays, like there was a stretch in the game against the Wizards in the fourth quarter that they lost, where the lineup was Michael Porter Jr., Julian Strawther, Jalen Pickett, Tyson, and DeAndre Jordan. You've not got a single ball handler on the floor. So how are you generating offense in those minutes when you have no one? And I understand it is a roster construction problem, but at some point it's not even a roster construction problem. It's an ownership problem, because they weren't willing to spend the money to keep guys on the team, and so on and so forth, right? But that's what I'm saying is, of course the minutes are terrible without Jokic, because the lineups are terrible in the minutes without Jokic. Like, what are we even doing here? They're just playing guys, hoping someone's going to step up out of nowhere.
Right.
That's the Nuggets. Like, that sounds impressive, but like when you watch the games, it's like, well, of course they're the worst team in the NBA when Jokic isn't playing, because what the hell is that lineup? Like, what are we doing here? Like, but do you know what I really liked? Did you guys see that interview with Jokic? And I don't know if he was joking or whatever, and he was talking about like, oh, back in Serbia, when guys have a bad game, they pay them a little bit less in their paycheck. And he was like, back in Serbia, when guys have a bad game, they sit them on the bench. I don't know how his teammates feel hearing that, but that was pretty funny to me. that was pretty funny to me. But speaking of the bench, players coming off the bench and so on and so forth.
You just left me on the beach. I'm still looking around.
Oh, BJ, stay focused. Stay focused. Don't distract you. Stay focused.
I told you exactly.
Stay with us now. The Golden State Warriors said last week that they are going to bring Draymond Green off the bench and start Jonathan Kuminga. Draymond said, we all think he's next up. I think he's next up. And at some point, he's got to take that step. And so Draymond seems to be willing to play that bench role. Obviously, last night when they played, they both started because Trayce Jackson-Davis was out for the game. But BJ, we talked about Jonathan Kuminga quite in depth last week. How do you feel about this move for the Golden State Warriors and Draymond Green taking this little step back and accepting a bench role?
Well, with a talent like Jonathan Kuminga, it's inevitable. Either he's going to play to his ceiling, or what we think his ceiling could be, or he will be moved on. So as we discussed last week, Mo, this is a step in the right direction for the Warriors to see if he can consistently, that's the key. Can he consistently play a winning brand of basketball that contributes to the success of the team? We know who the star player is, right? Steph Curry. And now we want to see, can Jonathan Kuminga bring that level of energy? I think it was against the Houston Rockets, right, where he had a 33-point game, I believe, minus, currently, there are two leaders, let's say Steph Curry and Draymond Green. Now, Jonathan Kuminga, we know his talent. Scott had the pleasure of scouting this young man. We know he has a tremendous upside. And, he has that word next to his name, potential. Therefore, now let's see if we can take that potential off of his name and say Jonathan Kuminga is, and he will have an opportunity to write that chapter, in the book. So this is great. Every young player needs playing time. I think he's earned it. He has weathered the storm. I believe he was on the championship, team. So we know he's been exposed to that. And now let's see if he can do that and become the player that we all thought he could become while we were evaluating him or watching him prior to him getting to the NBA. So I think this is an excellent step. I think this gives them young legs in their in their starting lineup. Certainly improves their athleticism, speed, quickness, and all of those things, and gives them a different look. So I think it was inevitable, and we touched upon it last week. Clearly, someone up there in Golden State's listening.
Maybe
we talked about this in depth. So we'll see how this turns out. Nice win last night. I'm sure we'll get to that later in the show, but I think it's terrific.
Yeah.
Scott, let me ask you this from a front office perspective. Is this move genuinely what it says it's about? Or is this a pump and dump where they want to start Kuminga, get his numbers up in the hopes that someone wants to trade for him because they didn't come to an agreement for a contract extension? He's a restricted free agent this summer. So are the Warriors simply showcasing Kuminga in the starting lineup, playing those minutes with Steph Curry to get his numbers up, to get his trade value up so that they can make a move? Or is this genuinely, do you think that they're looking at Kuminga as a future piece for this roster?
Oh, I believe they're looking at him as a future piece, but to BJ's point, they need a full runway to really figure out, can he be this guy long term? And you mentioned they didn't come to an agreement. That doesn't mean they won't come to an agreement in the future. Let's see what he does for this entire season. Because if you're the Warriors, you drafted this guy, you've invested a lot in him, it would work better for you if he becomes a guy that you can rely on consistently and who can help drive winning and help support Steph Curry for how many more years Steph Curry wants to play. Then this guy will be a dependable second, third piece in that starting lineup to help drive winning. You got to find that out this year. So I think it's good for both sides. So I don't look at this as a showcase move. What I also would like to add, though, to this conversation, for this to work, what we've heard from Draymond Green, I like what his position thus far on this. He's been accepting of it, because if he's not accepting of it, then now the whole experiment can get really clunky. But he's jumped behind the young man, Jonathan Kuminga. He's jumped behind the Warriors organization and said, hey, I'm willing to do whatever it takes for us to win. He's acknowledged that he believes the guy is ready. So those words can be very powerful in uplifting a guy like Kuminga to see him, fulfill his full promise of full potential that we talked about. So there's a lot going on here. I don't see this. It's too early in the season to be showcasing a young guy for somebody else, in my opinion. You're trying to figure out how to win. Steph Curry and those guys in that locker room, they believe they have a chance to win the Western Conference. Whether we believe so or not, they believe it. You can tell in how they started the year out. So this is not a showcase time. This is a time to really a discovery time more than anything else. Do we have a guy in our locker room that we can sign for another 4 or 5 years to help this Warriors basketball team stay, in the top half of the Western Conference?
The reports this week is that the Golden State Warriors are looking for another star player to pair next to Stephen Curry.
Who would that be?
This is what got me thinking, because when you talk to Warriors fans, the name that they would always suggest would be Lauri Markkanen. Now, I don't know how that works contractually and whatnot, especially with Kuminga only making $7.5 million this year. You can't trade Kuminga for a star player. You look at the salaries of the Warriors, it's going to be tough to match a max salary in terms of pieces without completely cutting the depth of the roster.
Well, so we just happen to have an expert here who can answer those questions.
So Scott might know a thing or two about this.
Yeah, he might.
If you're the Warriors, Scott, are you looking for another star player to come in and play alongside Steph? I guess the only movable contract that could facilitate that is Andrew Wiggins making $26 million. Because you're not moving Steph or Draymond, and then you've got De'Anthony Melton on 12, and then everyone else on the roster is moving under 10. But who do you think could be available during this season? Perhaps that's a better question.
Well, there'll be some guys that are available, but the key will be, are they a fit for what they have? We read a lot of that's the whole thing. See, the Golden State Warriors have been good this past decade because they've stayed true to who they are from a personality standpoint and who they bring in that locker room, how they're going to play the game. So it's just to say, oh, we need another star player. I don't necessarily buy into that unless said star is a fit and understands that they're coming to a place that everything's going to be centered around Steph Curry. We're going to play off of what Steph Curry does. And so would that be another guard? I don't know. I don't believe so, unless the guard is really more of a, played a similar role to Klay Thompson. And look, I know Buddy Hield has struggled here as of late, making some shots, but he got off to a terrific start. So they have a guy at the guard position who can really shoot, space the floor, to help Steph with all of his movement with and without the basketball. So I don't know right now. To me, I'm just continue to evaluate, can we get another good player? Doesn't have to be an all-star superstar. Can we get a good enough player? This whole idea that you get two superstars and you're automatically in contention, I don't know that's, I shouldn't say I don't know. I have not seen that just work automatically. I mean, you got to go back to the Miami Heat when they put together LeBron, D Wade, and Chris Bosh. But look at the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, I know the injuries have played a role, but they have 3-star players there now. And where they're in the standings right now. So that's not a guarantee. This whole you've heard me say this all the time. I value having depth. Depth is key when you're talking about, first of all, positioning yourself during an 82-game season to be a top seed in your conference. You have to have enough depth to be able to sustain injuries to key pieces and have guys who are capable of stepping up and allow you to keep winning enough basketball games. That's what we're seeing now happen in OKC. They've got one real star player and other guys who really developed into really good players in their system, but you wouldn't consider them all-stars or superstars, but they have a deep team. They play well together. And I know they lost a rising all-star in Chet Holmgren, but he was homegrown. So the whole idea, when you go out to someone else's team or organization, you got to get the right mindset, not just the right talent, just willing to come in and fit what you do, what you're about, your culture, if you will. And so I don't know that I've heard a name yet to bring this full circle that just stands out and says, okay, he's a great fit for the Warriors. So the Lord Marketing name came up. We talked about that before. Do I think Lord Marketing is talented? Yes. Do I think he is a guy that takes them over the top to be Western Conference champions? I'm not convinced of that. There's not enough winning.
This is the other thing with trading for a quote unquote star player. Most stars in the NBA don't really play a lot of defense. And you're going to trade that Wiggins salary. And we saw how crucial Wiggins' defense was in 2022 when they made their run back to the championship. So I don't know how it goes. But what I did love last night in the Warriors-Wolves game was Draymond Green at the top with the ball with Rudy Gobert guarding him. And Draymond Green did something I don't think I've seen him do since he was in college. He went and just off the dribble, straight to the hoop, dunks it, then hits Rudy Gobert with the night-night celebration. And we know the tensions between those two guys. I thought that was pretty funny. I thought that was pretty funny. But also during that game, what's interesting is, that we had a lot of expectation for Anthony Edwards before this season, getting deep into the playoffs and making that leap to becoming a superstar in this league. The final 4 minutes of the game, 0 from 6 from the field, 1 rebound and 1 turnover. It's not how you want to see your star player closing out a game. Gary Payton II did a great job defending him. But BJ, what are you seeing from Anthony Edwards right now, and what does he need to do to take that leap from being the star that we all know who he is to a true closer and a superstar in this league?
Well, I'm not really concerned, about efforts like last night, and here's why. Anthony Edwards started off the season. I think he still may be the leading player in the league with 3-point field goals attempted.
Right.
Okay. Now, as an offensive player, which, if there's a part of the game that I loved was the offense, right? Scott and I grew up with this guy named George Gervin. George Gervin gave us, as when we were young men, Mo, he gave us the greatest formula. He said, "Hey, young fellas, I got a shot for every occasion."
And
Quote,
he sure did. And he did.
To quote the Iceman, George Gervin. Okay? Now.
And he sure did.
Now, George Gervin, that means he did not have a preset to what he was going to do on the offensive end.
Right.
That means he was reading the game, the defense. He was, that's creativity, right? You don't just come out and say, "Hey, I got to get up 23-point field goal attempted," just because that's what. So I have a shot, young fellas, for every occasion. Now, Anthony Edwards and the way the game is played, I'm going to say this to Mr. Edwards, because Scott knows, and everyone knows, I am a huge fan of Anthony Edwards. Mm-hmm. However, when you put up that many threes, you let the defense off the hook.
Yes.
You're letting it. He is too good of a player to predetermine what he's going to do on the offensive end with that skill set and that athleticism. Mm-hmm. Under no circumstances should he let anyone off the hook when it comes to him having the ball as many times as he will have the ball with an opportunity to score. With a live dribble, I might add. Mm-hmm. So, Anthony Edwards, don't settle. Don't let good defensive players like Gary Payton off the hook. Don't let them force you and dictate to you what you should be doing on the offensive end. And once he understands that, I will guarantee that he will score in the fourth quarter or in any corner.
So far, he's taken 466 shots this season, and 241 of them have been from behind the arc.
Yeah. Yeah. No. And look, over half of his shots are 3-point shots.
Yeah, he's too good. He's too good.
He's too good. He's too creative off the bounce. He's too strong and physical to be taking that many versus getting into the lane, drawing contact, and getting to the line. Heck, he's only averaging 4.5 free throws a game.
Yeah, that's
and he's got to be. Anthony Edwards has got to be 8 to 10 free throws a game
at a minimum.
At a minimum, he's too good of a offensive player to be just settling and hoisting up a lot of threes. But again, I don't panic with him. I'm with BJ on that because this guy loves basketball. Mm-hmm. You can tell that being around him, you can see he loves the game. He listens. He's going to try to figure it out. He's going to be able to self-analyze and also be able to get good information there from the coaching staff at the Timberwolves. And I believe he will start to figure this out. This is part of his growth process because this really is his first season. I know we saw it a little bit last year in the playoffs, but Karl-Anthony Towns was still there, and he was drafted by Minnesota. He had been at Minnesota a long time, had been a multiple-time All-Star there. So there was, Anthony was the young gun coming up. Now, the throne is entirely his now in terms of him being the face of the organization. So that takes some time to get used to that too, and learning the responsibility. And to BJ's point, and my point as well too, now he's just got to go play the game and and nobody can keep this guy from getting to the basket or getting into the lane in this league in the one-on-one situation. And he'll figure this out, and we're watching that develop in front of our eyes right now.
When you have your talent, you have to do self-evaluations, right? Scott being one of the best of evaluating your team. You have to know your team better than anyone else. Let's pretend that Scott is the general manager, the president of that team, and I'm coaching. I would expect Scott to tell me this. hey, BJ, we got to get this guy, Anthony Edwards, to the free throw line a minimum of 8 times a night. Okay. And I understand what that means. That means I have to play a brand of basketball where I get him the ball a minimum of 20 times a night, Mo. You and I just talked about this last week about Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant were basically centers playing the 2-guard position. Under no circumstances should Anthony Edwards, with his size and strength and athletic ability, not be getting the same amount of touches in key operating areas on the floor. I mean, has anyone seen this? He's an elite athlete. I think we all agree.
Shea's averaging 8 free throws. Tatum's averaging 7.6. Jimmy Butler 7.5. Devin Booker 7.2. James Harden 7.2. So they're all way up.
When that happens, when he gets to the free throw line, that also shifts the game. What does that mean? That means our defense should improve. Why? Because we will have time to get our defense set 5 against 5. With all of these things, with our best player getting to the free throw line, now getting our defense set, now we have former defensive player of the year, that should improve our team drastically. Just that point of the game. These are the things that Scott, Mo, and our audience, we're saying has to happen if they're going to be a consistent team. Currently, if they're going to be the team that we all think they have an opportunity to become. But if he keeps long shots equals long rebounds, and then when you get to the playoffs, I can assure you that Anthony Edwards is going to have to get to that free throw line. So why not start doing it now, playing a brand of basketball that will translate to the NBA Finals, and begin to understand the difference between doing what the rest of the league is doing. You're following the leader, or you're saying, let me play a brand of basketball that only the elite teams can play. He is that level of player, so we're going to hold him to that standard because he is a terrific player. He has an opportunity at some point, possibly, to win the MVP in this league. I hold him in that regard. So, but as Scott said, this is his learning curve, and hopefully he'll get there one day.
Absolutely. I wanted to finish talking about one of Scott's favorite teams, the Miami Heat. And they got a nice win over Cleveland last night.
Yes, they did.
But something interesting happened with a minute and a half left in that game.
Okay.
Bam Adebayo and Terry Rozier both went for a rebound. Bam said, "You keep effing up my boards." Terry said, "I've got 9 boards. You got your double-double. Let me get my rebound." Scott, we all know players nowadays care a lot about their stats. But as a GM who signs players to contracts or trades for players, how much does that weigh in on your? Do you really look at, wow, Terry Rozier got 10 rebounds here, or Bam Adebayo got 14 rebounds, so we need to go get him? How much does this all weigh in and tie into your decision-making process? The fact that you've got guys out there arguing about who gets a rebound in a game that you've already won with a minute left in the game.
Well, first of all, you don't want to see that.
Yeah,
and I know that's not
that's Heat culture.
That's Heat. Yeah, that is not part of who the Miami Heat are. Starting with Pat Riley on down to Eric Spoelstra, and I don't believe that's who really Bam Adebayo is. And I don't know Terry as well. I know he's highly competitive. He hasn't played as well since he's come to Miami, so maybe he's feeling the pressure that he's got to do something that stands out to get back into good graces. Who knows? But look, you set the tone with your organization and your players that I understand the business part. Everybody is trying to perform their best so they can get the largest amount of contract that they can get to feed their families and earn a living. I get all that. I understand that. However, the stat that I'm going to always push back at players that I deal with, how are you impacting winning? See, a whole bunch of the numbers, if you give me a lot of numbers, you tell me you got 10 rebounds, 1 game against Cleveland Cavaliers, but you haven't been helping us win throughout the year, That's not making any kind of difference to me. And when I see players that play for numbers versus play for winning, I'm less likely to be attracted to those players to sign those guys. And again, Bam Adebayo, I love him. So I think he is terrific. He embodies what being a Miami Heat professional player is. So he's just doing his job. And so there's no room for that. I believe that probably got nipped in the bud quickly. But to answer your question, Mo, those numbers like that in the game here, there, that's not factoring into my decision about re-signing the guy or not. Is this guy a winning player? And that manifests itself in how I evaluate that, not only in the wins in the game, but how he's showing up to practice. Is he on time? Is he dependable? All those things, that's what's going to factor in for me if I'm going to decide to pay him a little bit more money or offer him a little bit less money, is how he fits into the entire culture of what we're trying to do, and that's win a championship. If you're not about that, then you probably would struggle with someone like me if you're just going to be out there for yourself. And I'll leave you with this quote. And this is from my coaching days when I became a head coach, and I went and visited. BJ knows this man very well, and God rest his soul, Mr. Will Robinson, who was a mentor of mine, great coach, and from the city of Detroit, first African-American head coach in Division I basketball at Illinois State, Coach Doug Collins, and he's affected so many lives. So there will be some listeners who will know that name, Will Robinson. When I took over as a head coach, I went and sat with Coach in college. He told me, he said, Scott, he said, I want you to remember this one line for me, because this is the essence of what you're getting into. He said, basketball is the most unselfish game played by selfish people. It is your job as coach to unselfish those selfish people. And therein lies, to me, and a lot of my philosophy in terms of even building out an organization. So that goes to everybody that comes in the building. Everybody has their own agendas coming in the door. You got to leave them in the parking lot, leave them at home, because when we come in here, it is about the collective, and it's about us winning. And that, Mo, is my answer to your question.
That's words to live by in any industry. Any industry.
Exactly.
Let me ask you guys, what's going on in America tonight? There's only one NBA game on. Is it some sort of NFL thing, or?
Well, it's Monday night football, but it's Monday night football. So, yeah. But it's not a big Monday night football game today. But
we just got the Knicks and the Raptors going up against each other tonight. Still no Emmanuel Quickly, but RJ Barrett against his old team and OG against his old team. Who you guys got for
Where's that game? Where's that game at?
In Toronto.
The Cup game is Wednesday too, right?
Yeah, the NBA Cup next round of fixtures. Oh, Tuesday, there's 2 NBA Cup games. But the Knicks NBA Cup game is on Wednesday against the Hawks.
Knicks are coming off a loss, correct?
To who? Who did they lose to?
They lost.
I didn't hear that. I didn't see that. I didn't see. Hey, Mo, I didn't hear you go through that. You conveniently missed that game. You know.
Yeah. No Karl Towns in that game, but it was interesting. Still, the Pistons went in and really controlled that game, start to finish. I'm gonna go with the Knicks in Toronto. And then Toronto is a little bit of a wild card. I know Barrett will be up playing in that game, but and expect him to play very well. But I just, OG's going back to Toronto. I'm sure he'll want to play very well going back there. And I just think the Knicks have the better team. And I don't even know if, with or without Towns, I expect the Knicks to win that game tonight.
Yeah. BJ, what do you think?
Oh, Mo, you got to give me the the injury report. Mo, I need the injury report. You know,
Well,
who's
Karl-Anthony
available,
Towns
Mo?
is a game time decision along with Cameron Payne. Kevin McCullough Jr. and Mitchell Robinson are out for the Knicks. Bruce Brown and Emmanuel Quickly are out for the Raptors, and DJ Carton is a game time decision. Just in case there's any big DJ Carton fans listening. I don't see how the Raptors win this. I don't know if they'll play Cat because maybe they want to rest him for their NBA Cup game.
Yeah,
But
right. Yeah.
but I think
can see that.
even without Cat, the Knicks should win this. But Toronto at home is
Precious is
significantly
back.
better than Toronto
Precious-
on the road.
Is
Precious
Precious back?
True.
Yeah.
Precious
came off
Achiuwa's
the
back.
bench
He played
against
against Detroit. He
Well,
played
like they
against
started
Detroit,
Jericho Sims and he got 6 minutes as a starter.
Right.
So,
Oh yeah, no. Mhm.
Interesting. But yeah, I got the Knicks. But BJ, who you got?
Well, on paper, you should say the Knicks. Who knows? I have no idea. I'll say the Knicks, but who knows? I have no idea.
Well,
I
actually,
don't even know who's available.
this week the NBA Cup quarterfinals get kicked off. I want to know from both of you which team is winning the NBA Cup this year.
Well, Mo, you're better at this. Give us the theories.
I'm gonna pull up the bracket right now.
Yeah, Mo. Who? Give us the theory. Give us your theory, Mo, because you have the theory. Last year, you nailed it. Last year,
I got it completely right last year. This year,
okay.
there are no Lakers remaining. Here's the teams that are remaining: the Thunder, the Mavericks, the Rockets, the Warriors, the Bucks, the Magic, the Knicks, and the Hawks.
Okay. What's your theory on this?
My theory is the Thunder win this. The
It's
Thunder
Mo.
will face
That's
the
who I was
Knicks
going
in the finals,
Thunder against the Knicks.
and I think the Thunder take it because then that way, when they get to the NBA finals, they can advertise it as NBA Cup champions take on reigning NBA champions, the Thunder and the Celtics. Tune in.
I'm going with the Thunder to win it as well. As I look at the setup, I believe the Western Conference is much stronger, and those teams are playing much better. Really, all four of them: the Thunder, Mavericks, Rockets, Warriors. All of them are very capable.
And
Knicks,
now
the Knicks a bit the Knicks, the Knicks and the Hawks. Again, the Knicks right now are their personality is a little bit different. They are driven by offense a lot more than in the past, and so they're an offensive team. So it'll be interesting to see.
the defense starts to improve, but what's sad that we didn't get to mention is for the Magic, they now have Franz Wagner out.
Yes,
and I think it's the same injury that Paolo's out with.
Yeah, he has an oblique, so it sounds like he's going to be out for an extended amount of time. Paolo probably will be coming back soon, but the Bucks probably beat the Magic in the opening round because of the injuries due to the Magic, and then you're probably looking at Bucks Knicks to come out of being the Final Four to see who comes out of the East, and I have the Thunder Rockets playing each other to see who comes out of the West.
So BJ, who are you picking to win the NBA Cup?
I like both of your picks with OKC, but there's no Chet Holmgren. I think it's going to be very difficult for this team to win without Chet. Like you just don't lose a good.
Yeah, but it's not a series. It's a one-off game. It's a one and done game.
Yeah, I get it, but those other teams are pretty good too. I'm going to pick the Rockets coming out of the West.
Wow.
I'm going Rockets. I'm going Rockets.
And they're going to win the whole thing?
I'm going to pick the Bucks.
To win the whole thing?
To win the whole thing.
Okay. Well, only time will tell. We'll be here all week breaking down the NBA Cup action. So make sure you guys subscribe to the show, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcast from. And until next time, get buckets.